Welcome to our 360-degree tour of Krasiczyn Castle. Its history subscribers, you can use the arrow icons to navigate around this video. Please forgive the chainsaw issue. There's a nearby village where people are cutting wood. And if you're on a mobile device, you can actually move the device around to get your own experience in this fascinating Renaissance castle from the year of 1580. If you turn back the hands of time, this area was a trade route, a Hungarian trade route, in fact. It was not very industrious, not very developed as compared to many other places in Europe, but strongholds and castles were of the utmost importance. More times than not, that simply came down to tax governance and asserting this dominance that we still know from local governments today. This particular castle was financed and finished by Marcin Krasiczyn, a very famous Polish nobleman, but through the centuries it's been handed down through many notable Polish families, royalty, and although it was certainly tested during the various wars and particularly during communism, I'm very proud and happy as a Polish patriot that now this is in a rather glorious condition. Considering that at one point it was totally burnt down, we'll get into that a little bit later, it is upheld. Here to my right, if you pan over there, you'll see the Divine Tower. This is an Italian designed Catholic chapel that has a very unique feature. Stay tuned for that, you're not going to believe it. To my left, you have one of the armored towers. I believe that this is one of the towers that actually has the family crypt. Now in the upper level of the courtyard, we will traverse this terrace and enter the Divine Tower, which really has one of the most unusual things I've ever seen in a space associated with Catholicism. I think you'll be very shocked as well. Maybe you won't be, maybe you're aware of this practice, but I certainly wasn't when I first came here. Things have been a bit reconfigured, but within the Divine Chapel you can see and get the feel for the regality of a lot of the artwork here, the statues, the inscriptions and carvings. You can even find some Latin, I believe, on these walls. People compare this type of artwork, in my circles, to the TikTok of the time. We're so dumbfounded by it, but it was one's way of expressing, right? There was nothing else to do. These are the treasures of Europe that I just love. Now there's a barricade here, and the reason that we cannot go beyond where we're standing is that these tiles constitute original flooring. They do hold masses here, they do have weddings here occasionally, and they do use that space, but they go to great lengths and measures to preserve the authenticity. This is very, very special. Now to my point, what is so special inside of this chapel? What did I want to show you? Well, for one, we are in deep eastern Poland, near the Bieszczady Mountains, and anyone who's familiar with castles of Poland would think about Warsaw's Royal Castle, Wawel Castle in Krakow maybe, but they wouldn't imagine that even in the deep province regions of this country that you could find such incredible artwork and structures. So that's the first reason that I wanted to bring you here. But the second reason, and I think it's one of the most special things in my personal opinion about this castle, is what you have on the floor. These are the Zodiacs. And you might be asking yourself, what in the heck is that doing in a Catholic chapel? You know, this was always a Christian space, and yet we find the Zodiac here. Directly above, so you have to pan your video up now and look into the dome, look deep into the Glit dome. There's an X, and on top of that X is Jesus Christ. And he's holding the world in his hands. So how some people choose to interpret the zodiac in contrast to Jesus Christ up there is that we are in the governed time of the present. It's passing, right? It's measured. And if you're Catholic or Christian, then you might believe that Jesus and God are eternal, watching down. So even if you're not religious, I find that contrast or that concept to be really, really touching. You know, the difference between eternity and today. And regardless of your belief, it's probably indisputable that once you pass on, if it's eternal darkness, if it's eternal hellfire, if it's eternal heaven, eternity is a real thing. And looking down at the zodiac, you pan down again and have a look. People even hundreds of years ago realized that our time here is fleeting. And it chokes me up a bit. I think that it's quite special. So this is the divine tower, all the reason in the world to come and visit. I want to show you one more thing before we leave. These doors are also original, hundreds of years old. And if you pan to either your right or your left, you will see a dying bird. And the concept here is that the bird sacrificed itself to its offspring, to its young ones. It died in the horrible heat of a drought, but it gave its blood to feed the young ones. And yeah, that's not milk that they're drinking. As far as I understand it, that's blood. And so this is another notion that I think is moving, religion or no religion, the motif of a parent sacrificing themselves for the love of their child. So that is the Divine Chapel, and I think that it is quite incredible. This part of the castle's facade is interesting. In these wings you had residences, you had formal rooms, offices, and utility. But if you switch it around to the other side of the castle, that bridge, that main bridge that we entered on, you'll see what was actually originally the main entrance. See, the town of Krasiczyn was once closer to the river San, S-A-N, which is on the other side of this castle. But because of flooding, they had to move it on over inland. Unfortunately, nothing remains of that. But the facade was intended to look like a grand castle, you know, like an epic, huge, incredible castle. And they put up a curtain wall, basically with windows that from the outside would appear to conceal residential rooms. But from the inside, you'll see it's nothing more than a wall. And the castle builders, they wanted to give this impression of something even more grand than what we see today. I think that's interesting. The notion of gluttony has always been a factor throughout times. And in many incidences, castles like this, yes, they could show your good fortune, they could show your fame and your prominence, but when times got hard and finances were thin, something like this could crush you. In fact, it was said that after communism ended, many of these castles in Central and Eastern Europe were meant to be repatriated to their rightful owners, so the descendants of those who built these incredible pieces of architecture. With the issue being, many people did not reciprocate the offer because they would cost a fortune to maintain. You know, people don't think about how much goes into financing something like this. But it's good that in Europe these buildings are maintained because it is a symbol of our greater human cultural heritage. For descendants from this area, I would even argue for Italian descendants, because much of this was designed by Italian designers. You know, the Divine Chapel, once again, during communism, this castle fell into the hands of automobile manufacturer, I believe, and they used it as a place for their workers to go and stay. Later it was turned into a hotel. Now you can actually stay here. I actually slept inside of this castle. So here we're again on the original front side of the castle. This is where the noblemen, this is where, you know, the people coming to the court would have entered. I believe there was a drawbridge here at one time. Don't quote me on that, please. But yeah, this makes the impression. It's very counterintuitive because today as a visitor, you enter from the other side, and it does seem a little bit odd, but if you come to Krasiczyn, you have to check this out properly. Now, if you pan over to the right again, you'll see this is that curtain wall that I was talking about. This gives the illusion of something much bigger than it is. So appearances of power really meant everything. And we're about to travel underneath the bridge here. You probably noticed my beautiful daughter Zuza is joining me on the little adventure. This is where she spends a lot of her childhood, in places like this. I don't think that's something to complain about. Interesting note also, for those of you who really love castles, for those of you who have kids, they do a summer camp here, where kids actually stay in the castle and do all kinds of fun stuff. I just want to tell you a little bit about the castle's dark side, a sad story of its past. One of the owners here, amongst most of the population, as it probably was at the time, didn't understand the downfalls of inbreeding. They had the benefits of keeping the family assets within their realm, but they didn't necessarily understand that their kids would be disfigured, disabled, and dead. They had a large abundance of kids. 9 out of 10, I believe, died. One was terribly ill, spent his life in sickness. And after they acquired this castle, it burned down because there were improperly kept fireworks, of all things. So this family is notable because they spent their life in mourning, just draped in black. That story moved me because it's like, you could literally have your own castle, you could have everything, but health, you know, and acts of God, fireworks exploding, you know, that can't even save the biggest and the bravest of us. So remember, power is a double-edged sword, because the risk that one has to take to acquire something as monumental as a castle can be flipped around upon them and sink them. Let's go check out the inside now. So back outside of the Divine Tower, we're here in the courtyard once again. Look at that. Immaculate. Incredible. There's one last thing that might be worth having a look at, and that is the view from the castle's clock tower. Now, these stairs are original, and they're very steep, and they're a little bit unpredictable. I don't think that these were meant to be stumble steps, as you might recall from my video about castle weapons. If you haven't seen that, check it out. But then again, couldn't imagine rushing up these. You might bust your head. And now we are on the top of the clock tower. For some stunning good views of our beautiful Renaissance castle. Here we have the courtyard. Beautiful nature surrounding, right? So from this side would have been the town of Krasiczyn proper. The river is just barely within eyesight here. You can see where the trees run along the field. And it flooded and destroyed the chance of the town thriving. And this is a pretty cool view of the bridge. And here we have the Divine Tower once again, my favorite.